Welcome to Between Authors. I'm your host, author Adrian Lopez. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that book or author that you may never have heard of, sort of like the treasure hunt for a reader. The goal for my podcast is to bring to you either those authors or books that you may never have found that may be the treasure you've been hunting for all along. Today in episode 52, I bring to you author Anthony Soto. We're going to go over a little bit about who he is, what he's published, what he's working on, and maybe what his plans are for the future. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's actually pretty
Absolutely.
cool. This is actually very cool of you. I really appreciate you, man, for doing this for me.
No, like I said, I do this because I really want to get all other indie authors out there too, because really the biggest challenge for all of us is finding eyes on our product, right? Finding the audience for our work, because we have to do this all ourselves. So anything I can do to try to help get your book out there, get you out there, I definitely want to try to do.
No, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you try and begin to introduce yourself to the viewers? Give them a little background information to you.
All right, my name is Anthony Soto. I'm 39 years old, I think. It's kind of that time when you forget your age. I happily married, 3 kids, got 17, 14, and 9. Quite a handful. I work full-time as a district manager, for McDonald's. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, I currently supervise about 70 to 100 people. So that's like my real world, job. But outside of that, I'm just a free-spirited mind. I'm always thinking, living in my world up here, because that's what I like to do. I see myself doing this as a hobby, but also as a passion. And that's something that I can potentially envision. Not sure what, the cards are out there for me, but it's something that I can see myself becoming more than just, a manager or a, repairman or whatever. I can see this being a career path for me as a fun way of doing things, because I heard once is do the things you love,
Yep.
So yeah. I mean, that's just kind of like in a nutshell. But there's a lot about me, and I mean, this is not the last time you guys will see me. I'll be around.
Absolutely.
Pretty confident.
And what's interesting is really like, kind of you mentioned, the majority of us do have the day job, right? The career job that we do. Because unfortunately, most of this writing and books don't really pay for anything else.
Oh, no.
Sometimes don't even pay for themselves, right? So,
not at all.
And like you said, is it a hobby? Yeah, but it's more than just a hobby. It's a passion project, right? Because you love it. You love doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, you're feeding your soul. Your soul's like, I want to do this.
And that's feel alive,
Yeah, that's the beauty of indie authors, because we all feel that, right? We're all doing this because we absolutely love it, not because we can pay even for a night out at dinner.
Yeah, I know,
we do it because we love it. We love the writing. We love the storytelling. We love creating. We love every portion of that.
No, this can become a career path and great, but still doesn't change the fact is do what you love, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, hopefully the good thing about it right now, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, but the good thing is there's kind of a, I don't want to say movement, but there's kind of a wave to supporting indie authors right now, right? And you see it on a lot of the socials where a lot of the review accounts are starting to say, oh, I'm going to review only indie authors. I'm going to read their books. They start sharing indie authors' work. So it's a good time to be in it right now, because there is support that's starting to gather for the indie author, right? And the indie authors themselves are very supportive of each other. That book community is hard to explain how supportive they are of one another. But it really goes back to we all understand how difficult this is and how much we love doing it, right? So it's great to always be part of that community to get your voice out there and help, get it shared.
now that you mentioned that, new to this whole, in the author social community myself, but I am amazed at how much stuff is out there, how much support, and how I'm not alone. There's so
Yeah,
many of us doing this. I remember a couple of years ago when I was looking into this, and I didn't see that much. I It was mostly negative. A lot of hard
yeah,
work, marketing sucks, and that's it. You're on your own. Good luck. But now, fast forward to today, it's different. You're right. It feels much different, and I see the amount of support. You yourself, kudos to you. I'm very, I love what you do, man, because we need people like you to bring the independent, and to get us into the spotlight.
yeah,
That's something that I wish I can do myself. That I'm working to, on my website per se. I I I love media and I love film and movies, books, whatnot. But if I can get back and help, I will focus a lot of my stuff on the independent people, the hard workers, the people with the careers that have full-time jobs, but they're doing everything they can, sacrificing as much as they can to live their passion.
yeah,
And that's something that, it's not taken for granted. Some people never get to live out their passion. They
yeah,
just, I'll leave it for tomorrow, or I'm so busy, or I can, but then they never do.
yeah,
I don't want to live that way, and quite frankly, not many of us do. So we do the best we can with the time we got, but nothing's easy. We got to put in the work. But if I can get back, kind of like you do with your podcast and, supporting the videos, even if just by putting reviews, of their work, or inviting them to post or guest, on my site, that would be great. But the same thing, not even just with my site, outside of my site, and videos and whatever I am needed, a phone call away, a text message away, anything that I can do to get back, believe me, I will, because it's, I
yeah.
think, the right thing.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful thing. Kind of like I said, it's the right time right now because it is picking up. And really, it goes back to, most of our marketing is all done on social media, right? It's done on TikTok, which is where we met each other, or Twitter, or any of those other socials, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. And the key to all of those websites is interaction, right? And it's
Hmm.
sharing people's posts, it's liking people's posts, it's
Hmm.
commenting on people's posts, it's getting the algorithm to understand that you're there, right? And you're doing
Hmm.
something to get your voice heard. And that's really all. That's what I always try to do, and that's I hope to try to get others to try to do that because, like you said, supporting an indie author is multiple things, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be buying their book. Reviews is a good way to do it. Sharing their posts is a great way to do it.
Hmm.
Commenting on their posts, you know, saving their posts, put it on your stories. All of that stuff is an interaction that lets the algorithm know they're here, right?
Hmm.
Because again, you were one of the ones that Bonita and I had done the Latinx community, and you're one of the ones that I've kind of put in there to shout out when I do that as well. And that's because the same thing. When you look at the algorithm, how many Latinx authors and writers do you see?
Not
Not
many.
many, right? So our
Hmm.
voice is not getting held down. It's just it's not getting pushed in the algorithm because there's no interaction.
Hmm.
There's
It's kind
no
of like lost in
yeah,
between
there's
the
not a
bus.
great deal of searching for it. There's not a great deal yet. There's some big authors that are in Latinx, but there's a lot of them in there that their names aren't out there, right? So that
Hmm.
was the whole point of that community is like, let's share each other's work. Let's comment, like, whatever, because it just keeps pushing all of us in the algorithm. And before you know it, all of us Latinx authors are in the algorithm, right? Then we start popping up on people's pages that normally wouldn't have seen us. And that's
Agreed.
the beauty of this, right? And it goes back to how do you support indie authors? There's all those different ways to do it, right? It doesn't have to be financial. Reviews, if you could do, are great. But like I said, just the share, just the like, the comment, all of those things help indie authors pick up.
I agree. Anything you can do to help out.
Yep. Why don't you also give the viewers an idea of what influences you creatively? It can be authors and books, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Oh man, if you really want me down this path, I'll be here for hours. But I'll do a super short version of it. All right. Believe it or not, as much as I like to write and read, and create my little stories, as you want to call it, at the end of the day, it comes down to the arts of media and film. I just love movies, and I have seen so many movies in my lifetime, good, bad, and everything in between. Yeah, yes, the ugly too. And I
Yeah,
say to myself, you know what? I have a creative mindset. I can make something better than that, you know. And that's the goal. That's the challenge. Let me make something better than that. And that I
yeah,
start putting those down and writing things down as I see these things, and I challenge myself. But the influences are big. Love Star Wars. Big Star Wars fan.
yeah,
I grew up watching Jurassic Park and E.T. and Indiana Jones and all that cool stuff that they don't make anymore. Well, they do,
yeah,
but they're not the same. I know you can relate. But then
yeah,
there's, the horror stuff, like zombies, and then you got like aliens and Predator, and you have
yeah,
all that cool stuff from like the 90s, 80s that even with nowadays technology, they still don't hold a candle to these type of stories and these type of movies because it was so practical. There was effort, in these movies. You can see that they actually, fell down. They actually made this little monster and put them together in a shop in a basement somewhere, not just
yeah,
drawn in, not having 100 people create a monster, that just hide in the background. So my influences overall vary, but mostly tailored to film. It's just I can take a book, any book, and some of my favorite books, by the way, like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, the actual original Jurassic Park book, which is amazing in my opinion. And newer stuff too. But I also got old stuff like To Kill a Mockingbird. These are
yeah,
things that I read, and because my mindset is so creative, I can visualize these like if it were a movie,
yeah,
and that's what it is. It's if I can read something and visualize it, I'm good. Love horror.
yeah, yeah.
I
Me
love
too. That's my
action
main
fantasy.
genre, and horror movies. Again, I completely relate to that because there is a lot of very bad horror
Oh,
movies,
there's some
but
terrible stuff
even
out
but
there.
the beauty of it really, and I'm sure you understand this, is even the bad ones are entertaining, right? And
Oh
you
yeah,
you come out of that 90 minutes or whatever you gave, and you're like, okay, that movie sucked, but I had a lot of fun, right? And that at the end, sometimes that's all that matters, right? You enjoyed that medium, you enjoyed the art that was created. But to go back to your point, it's absolutely true. I'm older than you, so I have seen a lot of the older horror movies as well. But it goes back to the point though, when they didn't have a lot of the special effects and they did have to do it very practical, like you said, just on a chair and with it, whatever they had to try to make that monster, that scene happen, they had to put more effort into the storytelling. And when you watch
hmm
some of those old ones, even the low budget, right? When you watch some of the original things, like you watch, I don't know if you ever saw Pumpkinhead, which is, I think they made
oh
it with
yeah.
like $50 or something, right? And you watch the original Texas Chainsaw or the original
hmm
Halloween, all those that were, they had no money in these books, in these movies. And you see how great the story was told because they had to, right? They couldn't lean
I had
on
to.
any of the special effects. And it's just a beautiful thing. And the horror movies are my biggest influence in terms of what I'm going to write probably my entire career in that side. And just movies in general is also the way I do it very similar to you is as I'm writing, I'm picturing the movie, right? And that's how I'm
hmm
writing through it because, again, like, you've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of horror movies or movies in general. You can do that. You can kind of picture it and know how you want that scene to look, kind
hmm
of like you're directing the movie, right? And you just
Right.
write the book kind of in that direction. I love it, right? I think it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, you always look at movies twice. I did that more when I was younger. I had more time. It's harder. It's kind of harder nowadays, as a
Yeah,
full grown adult. But I used to always watch the movie the first time and experience it like everybody else, just like a member of the audience. Oh, this is a new movie. Let me enjoy it. But if I like that movie, I will go back and examine it and study it. And I will study everything from like the cinematography to like the set design to the shots, the music. What worked, what didn't work, were there any hints, what did I miss? I would love that. Like the whole
Yeah.
creative aspect of just dropping subtle hints about things, and seeing how they connect together. That's just art.
Yeah.
It's hidden art, but it's art. And if you
Yeah.
open your senses to it and you actually look at it from that creative point of view,
I think your mic turned off. I can't hear you. There you go. I think.
there you go. Yeah, I
Yeah.
turned off. I'm a bummer. But where was I?
Just talking about how you would go back and you like pick apart the movie after you saw it a second time, the cinematography and
Oh
different
yes.
parts of it, and yeah,
It
I mean,
was it
I'm with you.
was
I'm with you on
yeah,
all of that.
yeah, putting it together, you'll see, it's something else. And it's not just one person, which leads to what we're doing with independent nowadays is it's a collaboration because not one
Yep.
movie was made alone. You can't do it without this, everybody. It's some of all the parts, whether it's set design, costume, you name it, music, shot. It was different people working together with one vision.
Yep.
And that's what we're
Absolutely.
doing now as independent authors, working together to help each other out. Because you
Yep.
can't be selfish, in this community. It's all about helping the other one grow. And in the process, you'll get your return. You give, you
Yeah.
reap what you sow.
Yeah. And there's no reason to be. It's not competition, right? Because
Mm-mm.
every author's voice is different, right? You're writing in horror, I'm writing in horror, but we're writing from two different points of view, right? Two different
Mm-hmm.
all of your experiences, like you said, the movies you've watched, the different things you've seen, and how you approach it is different than I do. There's no competition that needs to be there. Every
Nope.
author's voice has an audience, right? It's just we're all in the same boat trying to find that audience for our voice for our books,
Absolutely.
and it's
Your only
difficult.
comp-
It's just difficult
your,
finding them.
in my opinion, your only competition should be yourself.
Yeah,
You want to be better than the last version of you.
yeah,
And you just want to top it up. That's it.
yeah. And that's kind of what will happen, right? Because the more you write, the
Mm-hmm.
more you keep doing it, the better. Like
Mm-hmm.
anything, the better you're
Of
going to
course,
get it, right? The more the
you
more you
master the
keep going at
craft.
it.
You got to
Yep.
keep mastering the craft.
So let's talk about your book, Fresh Meat. I believe it comes out in April, correct?
Yeah, it comes out on April 3rd. So
Why don't you give a summary or like a synopsis of what the book's about?
I don't want to say too much where I will
Yeah.
start spoiling things. I'm one of those. I don't like spoiling things, but sometimes when I'm describing something, I accidentally spoil things. But Fresh Meat is a horror slash suspense, maybe a little bit of mystery story. And essentially, this is inspired by all my love of horror and mysterious stuff and movies. It has to do with a group of friends who are celebrating one of their friends' birthday. They go on a weekend road trip, and there's a storm. How cliche, there's a storm, and then things start going wrong where they have to take a detour. In that detour, they hit up to a restaurant called Secret Ingredient next to a gas station, which is originally named gas station as well. And when they're in there, they start having arguments and differences of opinions of what they do, shouldn't do, and how should they proceed, to their destination. And then things start getting out of hand. One of them goes missing. Another, vehicle gets towed, and of course, don't ever do it. Don't ever split up, but they do. And things just start going to hell. And that's essentially, in a nutshell, the premise of it. But when you go in there, if you do decide to read it, to anybody who's watching or in yourself, is just go in, expect the unexpected, because my intentions are to surprise people. You're thinking, okay, random town, middle of nowhere, people are gonna die. Yes, you're gonna get that part right, but why, how, and what's the purpose behind it, and what's the mystery behind it? That's the part I like to be different and unique. And you'll see the influences. I'm not gonna tell you because I want you to see it for yourself,
Yeah.
but they connect. You can tell that this movie or this book or this event inspired me, but it's a combination of ideas. It's a combination of thoughts, and it's me putting a spin on horror. Because the best thing about the horror genre is the one genre you can get away with risking things.
Yep.
No other genre will let you. You can't screw up a romance. You can't experiment with that. You can't experiment with fantasy. Oh, you can, but it's all usually magic and sorcery and whatnot. But with horror, you can do so much with it and not be judged. Well, you will be judged, but not be judged, because that's the whole idea. Just take a risk, jump off that
Yep.
cliff and see where it lands. Some people will love, some people will hate. And you know what? That's fine by me. Because we all have taste and opinions.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, when it comes to taking time to read that book, if you do, just open your mind. I think you enjoy it.
Okay. That sounds. I like if you send me a copy. I'm definitely going to get into it. I'm trying to finish up my zombie book right now, so I haven't had a chance to do that. But I am looking forward to read that and get into it.
I
Um,
hope you like it. I hope you like it. And as
no,
for the zombie book, I
I'm
can't
sure
wait
it
till you got
will.
it out. I want to read it.
Okay. Um, it's interesting because you made a good point, which is something I truly appreciate, is when authors try to come from different directions, right? And it's really the benefit of being an indie author is you can take those risks, right? You can do things
Hmm.
your way, how you want it, because traditionally published you can't, right? They're going to
No,
want
you
you
cannot
to do it a
follow this.
certain way because, like, I don't know if that's going to sell, so I don't want you to do that. Indie
Hmm.
author, it's on you, so you can be on that cutting edge. You can take a direction nobody else has done, and that's the beauty of it, right? That's the beauty of writing that in your voice, the way you want it to come
Hmm.
out. So
It
I am
starts being
looking
your
forward
book.
when I do get a chance to read it.
Yeah, well, I hope you like it. When you work, like you say, when you work with people like that, for big publishers, eventually becomes more of their book than yours.
Yep.
So you lose your voice. And no, I did consider when I was doing the research back in the day, because I did research a lot of stuff for years on end, and I see the pros of going big publisher, but I also see the cons, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, if I'm gonna go all the way, I'm just gonna do it myself. Go for myself. Yes, it's cheaper, but it's not necessarily cheaper. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just it requires you to take a bigger risk, and because it's you're vested in yourself. You're gonna work harder for yourself than this company, because they're after the money. If they
Yep.
doesn't make enough money, so be it. Move on to the next one. But you have to make it work. You have to make something out of it. And for somebody like me, who would like to see this be a long term thing, because I got a lot more books in mind to read, and write, I have to make it work,
Yep.
and I got to put in the effort. And self publishing is the way of doing it.
Yep.
Take the risk.
It's it's the it's the most interesting way to do it, right? And like you
Yeah,
said, it's
it's the
it's
crazy
not the
way of doing it,
easy
but it's
way,
the right.
right? So
Yeah, but hey,
I've heard somebody said, I don't remember if it was TikTok or which one of them. Somebody said, being self-published is taking the easy way out. Definitely, it is not the easy way
oh
out,
no,
right?
I don't know what plan is that. Maybe opposite land. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. But
Not
but
easy.
it's really,
Marketing's tough.
it really is interesting because um, when you think about taking the chance, writing in your voice, writing it for your audience, and and going in that direction, it is very interesting because again, when you go traditionally published, they will make you change stuff, right? They will say,
Hmm.
that's not quite what's popular out there. Go this way, right? Try it this way.
Try
And
to influence you.
yeah, and the thing is, there's a lot of people like you and I that like doing things different, right? That want to do things different that we haven't seen, right?
Hmm.
Again, I love horror movies, and I'll watch bad ones all the time, right? But sometimes you sit there and you're like, okay, like the one that always gets me is when they do the family, the father passes away and they have to move back home, and it's always the mother with the two kids, and the
Hmm.
kids are struggling to adapt, and right then that's when the devil comes in, or when the demon comes in, or they
Yep.
get attacked or whatever. And I was like, why you don't have to be lazy with it. Just take it a different direction. It doesn't always have to
Yeah.
be. Don't use that template and just say, okay, move this template and let me fill in my story. And I appreciate when writers like you, because I try to do it, just come from a different direction entirely and say, let me just switch this up, right? I don't know if you ever saw there's a company called Hammer Studios back in the 70s and 80s and stuff. They'd probably be on channel 5 in the weekend or whatever that you would be able to see. But they redid all the classic monster movies, right? They had Frankenstein, Werewolf, Draculas, and all of them. But they did the stories completely different, right? They didn't follow the original storylines. They were always different. It was always a different take on them, a different approach. And they were not great movies, right? But I love those movies for that reason
because
it
they were
wasn't the
daring.
same Dracula
Mhm.
story always. They're just completely different than anything you had seen on that side. And they had great actors that were young, right? They had Peter Cushing, who was in it. They had Christopher Lee, who was in it way before they did Star Wars. Those two, they were the main ones. They basically took turns playing the vampire or Dr. Frankenstein or the Frankenstein. They just went back and forth like switching spots, but they were great actors, so they carried the movie. But it was beautiful to see coming from that different direction, right? And
Yeah, that they took the risk.
not the same story. And I appreciate when writers like you do that. I appreciate actually when anybody does that, whether it's a singer or movie, game, anything. When they just come from a different direction, for me that's amazing. I just love seeing that.
If I may, I watched a movie maybe a year ago. It's supposed to be a horror movie, and that's a movie that completely like blew me off because I'm expecting one thing and it gave me something else. But have you seen it, Barbarian? That movie, there's about a
I don't think I have.
Airbnb, and this lady, woman, she she runs the Airbnb. She arrives at night, and the Airbnb has a person already staying in, and they start talking. You know, he's very nice about it. Like, I'll leave. You can stay. Anyway, the point is, they decided to stay there tonight. And this first like 15 minutes of this movie, when this is happening, it's one whole separate movie from what follows. And I think you should, because the movie, it makes you believe, and I guess for those that seen it, great, but those seen it, sorry. But it makes you believe that it's basically gonna be like a psycho roommate type scenario movie. Nothing of the sort. And that I loved it because it caught me off guard.
Yep.
Because we live in a world where it's hard to be original. It's very
Yep.
difficult because almost everything's been done. So
Yeah.
how do you stay original? The only way to do it is by using your voice. Put your spin on it and see what works.
Yep.
But
I
you should look.
agree.
You should look it up. If you haven't seen it, definitely.
Yeah,
It was
I will.
very
I'll
good.
definitely check that out. One of the other ones I just watched that I really liked too was, I don't know if you saw it, was Blood Red Sky. It was on Netflix, and it's a vampire movie that takes place mostly on an airplane.
Yes,
But
I've seen it. Yep.
yeah, but the beauty, what I really loved about that is it went back to really the old time where vampires were basically monsters, right? Because they've gone away from that. So every time you see a
Hmm.
vampire movie now, if you take Twilight out of the equation, but every time you see a vampire movie, the guy's walking around, he's got fancy cars and money, and
Yeah.
he all the girls want to date him, and they don't know that he's basically going to kill them later, right? But
Hmm.
they've gone that direction rather than originally these were just all monsters. Vampires were a
Yep.
monster. They
Yep.
were just
They
out there to
cleaned them
eat
up.
you and feed on you, right? And
Hmm.
I love that one went back in that direction, right? Where the character wasn't really in control, tried as much as they could, but wasn't in control, and just
Right.
got lost deeper and deeper into the true self as the movie goes on. I just thought that was great because they went back, right? They went back to what they were meant to be
Hmm.
and went away from the new template that you see. And I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when they kind of go back to the things are supposed to be the way they're supposed to be. Because a lot of society nowadays, they try to make everything pretty.
Yeah.
you know, and vampires are no longer intimidating. Frankenstein is sexy now. So it's like
Yeah, I know.
everything is just different, and you know, I get it. I give them kudos for trying something different, but there's just some things you don't change.
Yeah.
You know, and I am gonna go there. There's just some like movies, for example, you just don't ever dare to remake the Back to the Future. You just can't
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's just the way it is perfect. You should never touch it. And the same thing will go with some books, you know, like the Lord of the Rings. I've seen so many imitations, you know, read so many imitations of books, and some are good, but they're not Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's classic. It's you just can't compete with that. So do something different and try see what works. You know, the inspiration's there and the drive is there and the influences are there, but it's not Lord of the Rings. But
Yeah.
but you know, but people enjoy it, you know, and because that's what they do. They that was somebody's passion and they made it work and to hell what people think. And
Yep.
I give them kudos to that because that's what it is. I can't, for example, myself as a newcomer, I can't. I'm expecting a 1 star at some point by somebody, or two, or 10, or a million. But I'm also, you know, expecting 3 or 4. I don't expect fives. If I get fives, great, fantastic, thank you. You know, I'm glad you liked it. But I am not gonna crawl under a rock, you know, and cry myself to sleep because I got a 1 star and then call it
Yeah.
quits. No, the to me is bigger that I wrote the book and that it's out and available and that I made a dream a reality than for
Yep.
somebody not to like it. Because at the end of the day, I did it for me.
Yeah.
And if you
Absolutely.
like in the process, so be it. You know, great, thank you. But if you
Yeah.
hated it, thank you for reading anyways, because either way, you gave me your time. So it's a win for me.
Yeah.
People
But
talk about it.
yeah, and the other thing is, you know, there's no way to make 100% of the people happy, right?
Oh
I
no, it's
don't care.
impossible.
I don't care how good anything is. You're not going to make 100% of the people happy. There was
No.
an author that put a meme on TikTok, right? And I started laughing because it made perfect sense. It said that if you go to, I think it was Yelp or something for Stonehenge, right? The
Okay.
actual site of Stonehenge. Somebody gave it like a 1 star because it said it needed more rocks, right? And it just shows you're not going to make everybody happy, right? They didn't understand what the whole point of that was. They're like, I came all the way here. There's not that many rocks. 1 star.
The amount of rock it has is what's the idea?
So it just you never got it's just no way, right? There's no
Yeah,
if you
it's
do
impossible.
get all 5 stars, you know, that's great, but you can't expect it. You can't expect
Oh
everybody
yeah.
to read it and say that was amazing. You have to expect that there's going to be some saying,
Hmm.
I didn't like it, right? This was horrible. Didn't like the way it was written, didn't like the approach. It's just going to happen. There's nothing you can do to get around that.
Yeah, I'm just grateful that I got it. You know that you took the time and read it, but I'm also proud that I was able to finish it and just got it done. You know,
Yeah.
and now I'm working on my follow-ups. You know, and my other continuous stories because I have a lot. This has been a 10-year journey for me, little by little, penciling away, dot by dot,
Yeah.
and it's time. It's time to do it. So here we are.
Yeah. And so, again, I don't want you to give too much away because your book is coming out. And, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah,
If you can't figure a way to answer them, just let
I'll do
me
my
know
best.
because, like I said, I don't want you to overshare
Mhm.
anything. But I usually like to ask two questions. I used to like to ask, did you have a favorite scene in the book? And did you have a hard scene in the book, right? And
All right, so I'll start with the hard scene.
okay,
There's a scene in the book without spoiling, but that scene in particular is the scene that to this day I gotten the people that have read it the most feedback on. And that's because something bad happens to somebody they like. And the entirety of writing this book, there was a potential path where this scene might not have happened. But every time I deviated from that scene, it ruined the story for me. And the reason why it ruined it is because the character that's with that character will not grow as I needed them to. And thinking of myself as a person that is after the story and the emotion and the theme, which in this case for this one, the theme is more of how do you, what are you willing to do to change, who you are? Because the main character, without telling you who it is, the main character is no longer who they used to be. They changed. And there's a lot of constant callbacks to making this character realize that they're wrong, that they need to change, that the person they were better, and not the person who are now. And the book carries that journey as to this person rediscovers himself. And in order to do that, I had to write the scene, which was like the cherry on top to make this character finally wake up,
Yeah.
So that was a hard scene for me to write because I had to find a way of how to take a bad scene and make it good. And how to take a bad scene where a lot of emotions will be involved and still put a positive spin on it. And you'll see when you read it. You can shoot me a message when you get there. But you understand it was necessary. So that scene was probably the hardest scene for me to write. Now, the other question was, which one did I enjoy? You said.
Yeah, or your favorite scene.
I don't really have a favorite scene. But then again, that's kind of like me in the nutshell. I don't have a favorite anything. Just have things that I call like my top 10.
Okay.
But there's a lot. It's very hard for me to have a favorite because I always find multiple things that I like about any circumstances. But there's a particular scene where I get to play evil, kind of, where I let no, I'm not crazy or bad, but I let like that twisted side of me come to life. And I actually enjoy every second I wrote that scene. And that was probably the longest scene in the book, or second longest. I get them confused. But yeah, it was a scene where I was able to like show a little bit of twist in me, the creativeness of my mind and how I can actually write something, horrible. And that scene was fun for me. I can't tell you what it is, but it involves somebody's death. I'll tell you that much.
It usually does, doesn't it?
Yes, but it was fun.
Yeah, as I've been writing the zombie book, I'm going and I'm writing, writing it and writing scenes where you have some of the development of the character, and I was like, damn, I know this character is not going to make it very, very much longer. So
Yeah.
you're kind of building out the character. You're like, oh, people are probably going to like this character, and you're like, yeah, he's not going to make it much longer. But it's just interesting that because it's really, it goes with anything. The growth, like you said, the growth of the character would not have happened without that scene, right? And some storylines have to stop at a certain point for the others to continue, right? Because like with anything, like in real life, you hit that fork in the road where you have a challenge or an obstacle, and you have to make that decision: am I going this way? Am I going this way? Or am I just staying on this path, which is ultimately not going to take me anywhere because I'm just staying the same way? And it's the same in the book. If you don't make that left or right turn and kill that character off or have something happen, that other growth doesn't happen, right? And it's necessary. You just start knocking them off when you need to.
I think that if you start a story with your main character or characters, if you have more than one, which is very hard to do, by the way, I play around with the idea in the past. But if you take your main characters, chapter 1 or chapter 2, whenever you introduce them, and their world and where they live in and how it is at that point in time, and they're the exact same character at the end of the book, you did a bad job. That you blew it. They have to change, and they have to change based on the theme of the story. What are you trying to convey here? What is the purpose of the story, and how is this character going to learn the lesson of the story? And if they stay the same, they ain't learn nothing. So and that's a tip for new authors and people who are new to writing, or because we all are at different levels, and where we are, like some of us are mathematicians and some of us, are still stuck in the multiplication tables, it's just everybody's different. And I respect that. I recognize that. But if there's somebody out there that doesn't know, where to start or how to get there or where should I do, just remember your main character and your theme. They're connected. Whatever you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to say, whatever you're trying to achieve in your story, make sure that your character progresses and grows. Either he can turn evil if that's the way you're going, or they can be the hero. Either way, where they end cannot be the same as the beginning. And that's
Yep.
just some advice, because I learned that by watching a crap load of movies and reading a lot of books. And I have seen, not that I want to mention any, because I'm very respectful of people's work, but there's stuff that I don't understand a change. I'm like, how did they change? And I'm like, no, it can't be. A story worth investing your time on is one that makes you either feel good or bad, depending what you're after, and gets you, to that point where you see growth
Yeah.
or a conclusion to a story where it is reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the story should have an arc, and the characters should have an arc, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, and they are intertwined, right? It's just that
Mm-hmm.
they're happening together. That story's arcing because of the characters, and the characters are arcing because of the story. And yeah, when they don't match up, it's
It's tough.
difficult, right? It's the
It's
stories.
difficult.
Yeah, the story is hard to follow. It's hard to see because you can't go through take characters of real life. You can't go through life, come into challenges, come against obstacles, come into something traumatic, and
Mm-hmm.
expect to be the same after. It's just not going to
Mm-hmm.
happen, right? So
It's
you,
just not
you
going to
can't
happen.
imagine or expect your characters to do the same. They can't come into contact with all these things,
Mm-mm.
and then it's the same guy or girl coming out at the end. It's just not going to happen.
Oh, if I can add one more thing in terms of that,
Yeah,
if you're gonna have a multi-series type scenario, yeah, this is the guy that hasn't wrote a series yet, but I got I got some stuff going on. But this is again part of research and learning and understanding. If your character has to grow over the course of several books, just make sure that when you end the first book, there's some sort of growth still. Don't just end it and make it feel like one extended act one that's like 250 pages long. Because if there's people are gonna lose interest. You
yeah,
gotta give them some sort of victory, some sort of like conclusion or growth, so that when I finish this book before I start the second one, I kind of have an idea. Oh, they left here, they grew, they changed who they were at the beginning. They got here, but they're not done growing because the book has made it clear that they're not done growing, that the threat or whatever you want to call it is increasing, escalating, or they haven't learned their lesson fully. What's going to
yeah,
happen next? Because then that's your beginning point of your following one is they were successful or they were terrible, but they know that they gotta fix themselves or they gotta do the turnaround. And what happens between then and there, and then you have growth. And then always obviously have the end in mind. And that's what I done. I have 6 different endings written for 6 different books that are not fresh meat. And that's how I work. I'm like, I have this idea, this badass ending scene, and how can I link up to it at some point? And that's how I work. I do the ending, and then I do the very first chapter, and then just the hardest part is right in the middle. you
find
know,
the journey. I didn't do it from the ending, but I do it by scenes, and I did the same thing. I on the werewolf I wrote a bunch of scenes and then put the story together from the scenes, and it wasn't even in chronological order. I was just like, I have this scene, I have this scene, I want this one in there, this one needs to happen, and because you like you said, you know where you want to take it, so you
right?
just start writing these things as they come because sometimes they hit you and you're like, I need to get this out and get it on paper. Um, but yeah, I haven't technically written anything chronologically yet because I don't know if my mind works that way to do that. Right. I think even in my work, I do things kind of
It's
out of
hard
order
because
because that's how I see stuff and how I'm doing it.
you can't come up with a whole story chronologically. It's a lot. You have
Yeah.
if it comes to your mind, write it down, put a note, put in your phone nowadays. Whatever it is that you do that that note taking thing you got going on. But write it down. Make
Yeah.
and don't make mental notes. So much in the world nowadays. By the time you get home, the mental note is clear. It's washed. Just write it down somewhere. Put it in pen. Put it in a pad. Put it in your phone. You put it in your notes, your memos, whatever you want to call it, and just write it. Even if it's like chapter 13 of something. It has no beginning or end, but it's chapter 13. And it's in my mind. Let me just write it now. Forget about the
Yeah.
punctuations or the errors. Just write it. And later when when it comes to editing, you can fix all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And that's
Just
something
get
that
it
I
out.
learned. And using this as an example. So when I did Fresh Meat, I I wrote the whole thing after I had the whole story figured out. I did an outline. I had the ending in the beginning, but then I kind of come up with the outline because I didn't think I had the ability to create scene after scene after scene on the fly. I created an outline from beginning to end. I started writing chapter 2, chapter 3, and guess what happened? The outline went to hell
Yeah.
because I started writing everything as I was living it. When I compare the finished product to the outline, oh man, leaps and bounds. The difference is huge. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't do this. So write it down, use it, to kind of like as a little post-it. I should write this or I should write that, or I like this idea. But that doesn't mean that's exactly everything you're gonna, do. It will turn to something else, and that's okay. It's
Yep.
like a guide, It's not 100% the way it's supposed to be. Just use it to help you. It's a visual aid to remind
Yeah.
you that you can do this. And it was fun. And I have a complete draft for a second book, and I actually went through three different drafts before I settled on this book. So it's okay to start over and throw it away. I did it.
Yeah.
I saved it. Maybe I can reconfigure into something else. But you get what I'm trying to say is just write, 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 write. It's not a waste of time. It's only a waste of time
No.
if you do nothing with it.
Yeah.
That's just really my honest opinion. And if
Yeah.
that's what you want to do as so self what is it? Self publishers, and independent, man, do it. Just do it.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, just do it.
Yeah. The beauty of it too is, you're right, because I found I'm not an outliner at all, right? I really didn't do any outlines. I didn't do it for my zombie book either, but I really feel, and you touched on that point, is when you let that story organically grow as you're writing it, that's when it's the best work, right? Because you're in that
Oh
scene.
yes.
You're in that scene, and you're basically taking the role of the reader at the moment, but it's flowing through you. It's flowing through you as the reader would read it. And that's when it's the best. Like you said, it was so much different than your outline because you just let it flow. You just let it
hmm
come out.
When you let it flow, it's from right here and from right here.
Yeah.
You're passionate about it. When you're outlining, it's a task.
Yep.
It's the way I see it. That's how I differentiate the two. But yeah, I mean, I really like your book. I thought it was really cool, and I love the
Thank
idea
you.
that werewolves. I don't want to spoil it for the people, but I like the idea of the werewolves and the way how they were and how they tied into the bigger thing. I can't wait for a second one, man. But it was different, and that's what I like the most. It
Yeah.
was I can see the homages to like the old stuff. I can see the influence and the inspirations because I can tell you like werewolves.
Yeah.
It's obvious as a reader that you love werewolves, man. But as I process and I read it and I opened my mind to what it was, I was surprised in a good way. I actually enjoyed every second of it because it was very different yet similar, and it's
Yeah.
something that has not been done before. So I
Yeah.
mean, thank you for writing that, man. It
No,
was fun.
thank you, man. I appreciate that because that's like you. That's my goal, right? I want to come different. I want every story I write to be different, right? Because you know already that I'm not creating anything, right? You know what a werewolf is, you know what a zombie is, but I want
hmm
to take it away from the usual storyline. I want to take it away from what you expect, right? Because like you said, sometimes the best things is when you get hit with something you don't expect,
hmm
and but it goes back to your influences, and absolutely, I'm influenced by all the original Universal movies, the old characters, and somebody else said that too, that they could see the old school side of it, but then the change, right? Because
hmm
old school werewolf stories never had the pack, and I was like, yeah, but the pack's the most important because if there are more than one, then they're
hmm
going to have a pack. That's what wolves do, right? So
That's what they
why
do.
wouldn't there be that hierarchy of the political side of it? Because they would have it if there's more than one, right? All the stories always are talking about one, and it's by himself, and he hates being a werewolf and he's ashamed when he turns. I was like, why? I go, that character has so much more depth in it to take it other directions instead of going that way.
It was clever, man. I really liked it. I can feel the passion through the words, and I really enjoyed it. So seriously, thank you. It was good. I liked it.
Thank you, man. Um, so I know you're talking about you have, like we all do, we have a bunch of different stories, partially done, partially outlined, partially notes. He's somewhere along the line. Again, without you giving away too much, there's a couple of questions I like to finish with, and one of them is, what are you working on right now, right? And again, without giving away too much of the story,
Hmm.
but the big one is always is what do you want to make sure you achieve as a writer, right? And that could be, right now you're talking about, because we both love horror in that genre. Is there a genre that maybe at some point you're like, I really want to attempt this, but not quite yet? Or do you want to write a series at some point where that's
Yeah.
multiple, like you said, multiple stories, multiple books? Where would you like to do something you absolutely want to achieve before your writing's done?
You're taking me to some dangerous territory right now. All right. I'll be very frank, very honest. Is I will tell you, I have a story. Let me rephrase that. Believe it or not, Fresh Meat is not my first story. This is actually like the last one that came to my mind, and that was
Yep.
about 10 years ago. You know, at that point, many have in my mind, after that, but I outlined slash wrote chapters, act ones, and endings of 6 different stories before Fresh Meat. But Fresh Meat is the one that kind of like, based on my love of horror, I decided to just pursue and finish. And I figured that it resembled what I'm doing because of the genre, which is risk taking.
Hmm.
And this whole thing is just big one giant risk. And but in the chase of a dream, because that was always been a dream of mine is to make books, to write books. I know I can do it. And as I wrote Fresh Meat, I always thought it was a one and done. And as people 2 years ago ish when I finished the original draft that they read, they liked it a lot. Where they said that, are you ever going to write a second one? Because you should, you should write a second one. And I said I wrote this as a one and one and done. Like, but it's open to potential, sequels or spin-offs or whatever you want to call it. So after meandering on that thought for about a year, I actually wrote the sequel. It is going national for the first time here. So it is done. It's a written. I have a whole written first draft, beginning to end, and I will tell you that it's probably going to be a trilogy.
Okay.
Now, with that being said, I am not going to say anything more about that, only because I don't want to take the spotlight from Fresh Meat.
Yep.
Because I need to make sure that this grows into something that people will enjoy, and if it does enough for me where I feel satisfied on taking out the second one, then I will. Because it took me a while to figure out the perfect story for the second one,
Yep.
but it is done. I have another book. It's called On My Way to Davenport, and it's essentially about a man. And this one's more drama slash cop mystery, and it's kind of like inspired by Wild West movies a little bit. 1970s cop dramas and RoboCop, believe it or not,
Yeah.
the original. And it has a lot to do with a man who lost his wife and daughter, and he lost it. And then here's the twist, and I'll tell you because it's important to the story, but it's not why the story exists. But he's the reason why they died. So he's trying to atone for himself, and as one day he decides to take the permanent solution to an easy problem by trying to kill himself. Fate brings in a young lady into his doorstep that looks exactly like his daughter, except it's not his daughter. And he is a former Navy SEALs retired type person, a badass in retirement. And she's being chased by some biker gangs and tough dudes. And now he begrudgingly, but at the same time mesmerized by the appearance, decides to help her. And with her. He becomes her protector, but he's also trying to figure out why they're chasing her and what he needs to do to save the day, quote, basically saving her and making it right and moving forward. So that's my most, outside of Fresh Meat, the second one. That's kind of like where I'm at the most accomplished with. But I got other stuff. I got, yes, Lord of the Rings type fantasy. I have outlines for 4 of those books completed, and that's the one that I want to say that's going to be my masterpiece, my work of art. That's the one that I like. That's going to be what I want to be remembered for. If that makes sense, the aspiration is high. I mean, it could be Fresh Meat. It could be Fresh Meat, but but the aspiration is high because you always got to aim higher. And that's the one that I know for sure will leave a lasting impact because I have that story in my mind since I was in high school. And I graduated in 2003, and ever since then I've been picking it away for years. But I always said to me, Anthony, don't release that first because that's a commitment. That's a lot of books. That's a lot of stories, and you gotta start small, man. You gotta lay in the groundwork. But that's sci-fi fantasy. So to answer your question in many ways, I don't want to be sticking to just one genre. Although horror is probably my favorite, followed by action adventure / fantasy, the Indiana Jones of the world, things like that. And then I've got a couple other horror stories that are not Fresh Meat at different points in pad. So stay tuned, man. I got a lot coming out. You got willing, everything works
I'm
out
looking
for me,
forward to everything you have coming out. Definitely on the 3rd, when the book comes out, tag me, man, on everything so I can share it out there and get it out there on all the different socials and try to get you, some more eyes on the product. I'll definitely help you where I can on that side
I
of it.
appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for that. I know you don't have to, but I know you want to, so I thank you for that. I respect you for that.
I enjoy doing it, right? It's something I truly enjoy doing. So yeah, definitely always tag me on any of that stuff so I can get it out there. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, man. I enjoyed talking about writing, talking about horror movies in general, right? It's all the stuff I love, all the stuff that's influenced me. So I really, really enjoyed this. For the viewers that are watching, if you have any comments or questions for either Anthony or me, definitely leave it down below. We'd love to answer you and talk further about our books or stories or anything you have to ask. I will leave all of Anthony's links below the video. For by the time this comes out, the book will be available. His website, everything else, socials, whatever else he wants to share. All the links will be down below. And definitely, subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications so you don't miss all these amazing, talented authors like Anthony coming up in the future. Thank you again, man. I really do appreciate you coming on today.
No, thank you for having me, and you guys will have a great night.
Yeah. Thank you, viewers, for watching as well. Good night.